Well, probably most of y'all probably don't know who I am, most TCU fans. If you are coming over, if you follow me on Twitter, whether if it's the Colts or maybe you are a TCU fan, I am Michael Terrazas. This is a new podcast that we are starting for you here today, and this is going to be a really good one, in my opinion. I found me a great co-host, okay? I'm about to introduce you guys to her. She is a writer for Mavs Fans for Life. She is very intelligent. She is smart. She is knowledgeable about sports. And I know y'all don't, Rashad and Destin don't really show me up on our show that y'all listen to over there. But on this one, I might have my work cut out for me, okay? So, guys, I am Michael Terrazas. I love TCU. This is the Purple Rain podcast, but of course, my co-host, Adrianna Araujo.
Araujo.
Araujo? Okay.
Close enough.
Well, Adrianna, introduce yourself, please.
Awesome. That was definitely a very hyped up intro. Don't know if I can live up to it, but I'll definitely try. So I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm a TCU student, sophomore, business major. From Fort Worth all my life. I've been growing up going to the TCU games. We've had season tickets, so been here for the whole ride. Been going to the games when we were in the Mountain West, the struggle bus days. So a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm super excited to do this. Definitely going to be progressing and learning throughout this because I've never done a podcast, but I'm very passionate about it and I'm super excited. But yeah, I just excited to talk about this, and this first podcast is going to be super loaded. Lots to talk about. So but I'm Adrianna and super pumped to get into all of this stuff today.
Guys, I normally bring the energy, but on this show, I'm going to try and hold back the voice cracking, the tears. Like you said it, Adrianna, this is a loaded show for a pilot, and Gary Patterson is no longer at TCU. I would have loved to start out with something more about the team, but unfortunately, this news came out of nowhere, honestly. A couple of people that I talked to didn't think it would happen this quickly, but I will say Jeremy Clark from Frog Blitz 24/7, from Frogcast, he said that, sometimes the analogy he gave, like in a relationship, if someone did something bad and they kept doing it, and you kind of give that, this is your last chance. Like, if you do it one more time, it's over. This game against Kansas State was sort of that to Gary Patterson. And when that was a embarrassing loss, Donati, Chancellor, they came together, and I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce his name correctly. Can you help me out with that, Adrianna? The Chancellor?
Oh, Boschini?
Yes. Boschini, okay.
Hopefully I said that right.
Donati and Boschini came together. They got with Patterson on I believe it was Sunday. They had the talk, the conversation. Gary Patterson did have the chance to finish the year out as head coach of TCU. Donati wanted him to finish out the year, but it was Patterson's choice to step down immediately. He thought that it was a need for an immediate change. If it's kind of like, if I know I'm going to be fired at the end of the year, I might as well just cut ties now. It's somewhat, Ed Orgeron at LSU is getting his farewell tour. I really wish Gary Patterson would have gotten his. Ed Orgeron does have a national championship, but he did not build LSU the way Gary Patterson has built TCU. So, Adrianna, what is your reaction, your sudden reaction? Because this is still like 24 hours later. We're still getting details as this day and this time progresses. But what is your immediate reaction to Gary Patterson stepping down?
Yeah, this definitely hurts. It's something that I am surprised by, obviously. it's definitely been looming around the program. A lot of talks have been surrounding it about maybe, potentially at the end of the season. But mid-season, I'm just super surprised that it ended this way, and honestly disappointed because I really do think that after everything, he does deserve that farewell tour that you were talking about, and he does deserve just to end on a way better note. So I'm really disappointed by that. And it's difficult because part of me thinks that a coaching change may have been needed, but I just don't think that this is necessarily the way it should have happened or gone about. I don't know. So that definitely hurts. But he's been the coach as long as I've been alive. He's literally the only coach I've ever known, and he's done a great job. I saw a tweet from a former player, I forgot who it was, but talking about not only just the football program, but for the college and for the city of Fort Worth. Like, he's been the guy for Fort Worth and just elevated it on all aspects. I mean, he has a statue. He got a statue of himself in the front of the stadium, like in 2016. He's still coaching there. Like, that's how impactful he's been for this program. So yeah, this one, like I said, definitely hurts. I wish it was done differently, but I will say the way that it has been done, I think, even though it does stink, I think so many people have been like, wow, because it's happened this way, like like so many people have recognized everything that he's done. So I think because of that, it's like, oh, I wish this ended a better way, but like, he's done a great job. He brought us from nothing, and just can't really like minimize anything that he's done by any means. I think he also had like the longest active streak also. I mean, not anymore, but at the time, the longest active streak as like a head coach
I
at the
think
time.
he was number 2 behind Iowa's Kirk Ferentz.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so he's up there. But I don't know. I just don't think we'll ever see anything like this again.
Hopefully we will. Hopefully, but these guys like Gary Patterson, they don't come around every year. They come around generationally, and I mean, I can't think of a better man that could have done what he did at TCU. I mean, you have, like I mentioned, Kirk Ferentz at Iowa. Nick Saban, he's going to be at Alabama until he decides it's time to retire. Urban Meyer, you thought may have been at Ohio State, but he got in his own way there. He sucks in Jacksonville. So I'm sitting here thinking, what caused this to happen? What went on? And from my understanding, players were he was kind of losing a couple players. I mean, he is very old school. He has a very old school way of thinking, teaching, coaching, going about things. And don't get me wrong, past alumni love Coach P. They would not be where they are. And they've even spoken it on Twitter. They wouldn't be where they are without Coach Patterson. But sort of something that I see in the NBA, in the NFL, this new generation coming up, it's a little bit different. I mean, I'm 23 years old, so I'm not trying to talk like I'm 40 years old or something like that, way past the generation. But I mean, Quentin Johnston, I mean, he graduated from literally where I live. I mean, I went to a division rival, so didn't really like him in high school, but the respect was there. And in my opinion, I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I think after going 3-5, I wasn't the biggest on making a change in season. But right now, Jerry Kill is going to take over as interim coach. From what I'm hearing, Chad Glasgow is going to take over defensive play calling in Gary Patterson's immediate I don't want to say retire or anything, but I'm pretty sure he's going to retire. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I feel like I'm all over the place about this, still trying to string together everything, trying to put everything together. I mean, I didn't know what Mavericks basketball was without Dirk Nowitzki, and we got thrust into Luka Doncic, thankfully. With my football team, Indianapolis, I knew nothing but Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy. Went to Andrew Luck. Now we're with Carson Wentz. With TCU, where are we going to be going next? I have no idea. I think we'll probably discuss that maybe later down the line. But in this episode, this pilot, I really want to focus on what Gary Patterson did here. I mean, you talk about 10 top 10 finishes in his tenure. That's very, very hard to do. Going through 3 different conferences, elevating the program. I don't know if anyone else has ever done it like that. I really don't. It is to be noted where TCU is today has a lot to do with the football program, but where TCU sports is in general is in so much of a better place because of the attention that Gary Patterson brought to TCU. You know, you were able to get a coach in basketball, Jamie Dixon, who played at TCU, who was really one of the better coaches in basketball when he was at Pittsburgh. And of course, you know, that whole debacle with UCLA, the Blue Blood program, all that hype, but Jeremiah Donati, the GOAT, held on to Jamie Dixon. Where they are now, I mean, the women's soccer team winning the freaking conference championship. You got baseball. The baseball, they're going to do their thing. I can't say enough where TCU where TCU sports is today. Gary Patterson doing what he did with this program. I mean, I even noticed the difference with the stadium. I went to the game in 2017 against Baylor where that big fight broke out. I was there. I also went to the game, the home opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff. The difference between the renovations, the new scoreboard, everything like that, it's such a beautiful stadium. I mean, it looks bigger than it does on TV, of course, but Adrianna, looking at Gary Patterson's tenure, what would you say is probably one of your favorite highlights during his tenure?
Oh, this is probably like super obvious and biased, but the Rose Bowl, I mean, it's, how can you not love that? I remember, so I have like a big like personal like memory from that, but I remember when they came back, they had a big like parade and here at TCU. And so we had season tickets, and I remember my family talked about going to the Rose Bowl, but we ended up not going. And so then when they came back, the whole team was there, and me and my brothers were lucky enough to get autographs. I must have been like 9 at the time, like 8 or 9. So I was like pretty young. We got autographs from everybody. Obviously, I really wanted an autograph from like Andy Dalton, but that was definitely the hardest person to get an autograph from. And he was like behind a gate. There was all these security people, and then he like called us over and was like, "Oh yeah, like of course I'll sign your stuff." Whole team was. I ended up getting an autograph from everybody on the team. They were so kind. Everyone was so nice to us. And I remember at the time, like, because I was young, they were like these larger than life like figures to me, I guess. And like really throughout the whole time, every time we went to a football game, every time I met players, they're always so kind, so genuine, and like wanted to talk to you, wanted to be there, etc. And I feel like, and that kind of stuff that comes from the top down. And I really do think it's like a direct reflection of the like ideals and values and stuff that Gary Patterson instills in like the players. Obviously, I'm sure all of those players are great individuals to begin with, but I think that definitely is a reflection of what Gary Patterson also teaches, his team and players, and like how to deal with fans and media and just all of that. So I think for me, the biggest thing was probably like that Rose Bowl interaction was just super cool for me. But I never once had like a bad really interaction with like anybody in the organization or the team at all. So like that was really cool. I would say I also was just thinking of one thing going forward. This is like a big question for me. Do you think Gary Patterson will coach somewhere else?
No.
And if so, where? No.
I don't think so, because I think he was vocal about not wanting to coach far into his 60s. So we
Yeah.
knew the end for Gary Patterson was near. Was he going to make it into the new expansion of the Big 12? That was the biggest question this whole time.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have, maybe he wouldn't have, but I don't see him going anywhere. I mean, I think him, his wife Kelsey, they are so heavily involved with Fort Worth. I mean, we already know they love the Fort Worth Zoo. I mean, I think that's where they met, if I remember their story correctly. I think Kelsey was working actually there at the zoo, and she ran into Gary. I don't know. I would have to go back and listen to it, but I know where they met had something to do with the Fort Worth Zoo.
Interesting.
No, they're too heavily invested in Fort Worth to pick up and leave to go coach at another job. I don't see. I think he's done. I think he is, honestly.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of going back to what you're talking about as far as like the stadium renovations and stuff, I just the whole landscape of the campus has changed so much. And I know like on campus, the number one question I always ask people is like, how did you hear about TCU? Because there was such a long stretch of time that I would talk to people and they'd be like, TCU, like, didn't know what it was, didn't know where it was. Just like, okay, that's kind of awkward. And then enrollment's been going up at TCU, obviously, and so many people know about it. And I've so many friends from like California, Indiana, and just all over. And they're like, oh, I first heard about it. I saw them like on TV, like playing football. And that's probably like the number one answer that I hear is I saw them playing football and then, like start doing research and stuff. And I just think it's pretty cool because that's definitely an answer I would have never heard for like the longest time. But yeah, it's definitely just the impact and like the growth of just the program in general. And it's been the campus and just everything. It's changed so much because of what he's done and it's just everything. I don't know. It's so crazy to think about. I'm honestly just at a loss for words.
Yeah.
It's still so hard to comprehend that going forward, even mid-season, that he won't be there. I don't know. I don't know. And going forward too, who's going to replace him? I have no idea. And the talks have been all over the place. I know the biggest name I've heard is Sonny Dykes. I don't know.
No, hard pass. Please, hard pass, for the love of God, hard pass.
I would agree with that for sure.
My favorite memory of the Gary Patterson era. Rose Bowl is going to be the top always, but my number one memory has to be 2015. It has to be. That whole entire season was a roller coaster as a fan. Just if you were heavily invested into this football team as a fan, it was a roller coaster. I mean, the games, the injuries, the expectations, the adversity that team overcame. Now, coming in, I think they were ranked number 2 in the nation. They opened up against Minnesota on the road. 2 guys at linebacker played that game that we never heard from again. Well, another one came back the following year. Sammy Douglas and Mike Freeze, everybody's favorite what if. Mike Freeze started at linebacker that game. I think Sammy lasted one drive. Then we saw Ty Summers for the first time. I think the greatest linebacker ever at TCU, Ty Summers. And then Mike Freeze ended up getting hurt later in that second quarter. And then some dudes I've never even heard of, Traven Howard, Montrell Wilson, are playing linebacker. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, what is going on? And then it turns out Mike Freeze ended up leaving the program. I think he went on to do some baseball at junior college. Sammy Douglas suffered a season-ending injury. So, I mean, two safeties who weren't even supposed to get playing time at all that year, Traven Howard and Montrell Wilson, you know what? They stepped up and they said, you know, we'll play linebacker. I remember they played Stephen F. Austin, SMU. They were a little shaky, of course, but that whole year, the injuries, Colby Listenby, Josh Dotson, that injury broke my soul in that Oklahoma State game. The unfortunate events that happened with Trevon Boykin in San Antonio, that whole year, I mean, the injuries upon injuries that team suffered, and they weren't supposed to finish that year 11-2. They were not supposed to be that good. But the fact that that team kept fighting, they fought through every single game. They weren't even supposed to be in the game with Oklahoma on ABC. I believe it was a night game with Bram Kohlhausen starting. No, I think it was Foster Sawyer that started, and then Bram came in after him. That year, ending it the way they did against Oregon. I was at that game, by the way. I was so pissed off at halftime. Oh my Lord. I was so mad because I just kept thinking, like, would this happen if Trevon Boykin was here? Would this be happening right now? And then they came back down 31-3 and won 47-41. That, honestly, Adrianna, 3 days after that, my voice was still gone, if I'm being truthfully honest with you. My voice was dead. It was gone. I mean, my mom called me afterwards. I went to the game with myself, my brother, my dad, and a friend from our local church. And we, oh my Lord, I lost my voice. It was wrecked. And I remember when the last incompletion happened in the end zone, I remember literally being a little B word and cried. I literally did, because that whole season meant something. It meant something. And I think it signified what Gary Patterson stood for, where he came from, how he built this program. You start, no expectations. Some things happen. You know, when he first started as head coach, I think, 1-11, that one game came against Oklahoma and they won. That's what put TCU on the map. You kept fighting. He kept clawing. He kept fighting, going to the SWAC, going to the Mountain West, eventually getting to the Big 12, getting to a Power 5 conference, winning a conference championship, being discussed in the college football playoff. 2014, I have been consistent. They were the best team in 2014. There was not a team I thought I watched that was better. There was not a team on defense I thought was better. On offense, that was better. My biggest thing was Ohio State. I didn't have a problem with them, but I had a problem with Florida State because that team sucked, and they showed it in that Rose Bowl game. They were the best team in 2014. I believe that wholeheartedly. 2015 was it signified what Gary Patterson stood for. That was my number one memory of Gary Patterson. I think why I love the game so much, why I'm heavily involved with it so much, is because of him. Of course, with Tony Dungy, Andrew Luck, some guys that have made me fall in love with sports, Gary Patterson is one of them. He is one of them. I think there's only 4 of them I put on that list: Dirk Nowitzki, Gary Patterson, Andrew Luck, Tony Dungy. And that's a list of some incredible men that have done tremendous things. And Gary Patterson, I mean, I'm not sure if he'll ever listen to this show, but man, for me, thank you for everything you did. You were a big part of me falling in love with the game of football, falling in love with TCU. I have nothing to do with TCU. I'm not a student. I wasn't smart enough to even apply for that school. My grades were never there to get to TCU, but man, did you let a guy fall in love with football, man. That's my last thing on it. Getting into, you mentioned it, Adrianna, getting into some potential candidates, Sonny Dykes is the front runner to take over this job. And I would like to just frontline his ass out of the conversation, honestly. That's just where I'm at. He's doing a good job at SMU. Honestly, don't leave SMU, in my opinion. You just started there. You're gaining momentum in recruiting and in the state of Texas. In my opinion, why would you leave SMU? And I'm not trying to say this because I don't want him to come, but honestly, why would you leave SMU when you're just now getting started?
Yeah, I agree. There's not a big incentive for him, and he's got a strong foundation, I would say. Like you're still getting your guys there. I mean, definitely TCU obviously is better, but that would be the biggest incentive. But just in general, I feel like he has a good thing going. So I would say that I don't see him leaving there unless I guess the offer would be like extremely enticing. But just in general, I don't really see it happening. But yeah, I know that's been the main talk right now.
I wouldn't say I don't see it happening. I mean, he's being named the front runner for a reason. There's conversations going on. There's conversations going on behind closed doors. I do know that Jeremiah Donati will speak with the media tomorrow afternoon. I do know that to talk about, possible candidates, or I don't even know if he'll talk about the job vacancy, but Sonny Dykes, let's just say for sake of argument, he did come to TCU. Recruiting, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you bring recruiting wise. And this is also a big thing in college, taking a loss at head coach, bringing someone in. If anything, he's got to be able to recruit. He has to recruit. We've already seen, unfortunately, a couple of decommitments from the TCU program already. Another prospect, I'm not going to mention any names. They're still high schoolers. I'm not going to mention any names, but a couple of them have decommitted already. Another one has reopened his commitment while being still committed to TCU. Sonny Dykes relies heavily on the transfer portal. I don't necessarily think that's a recipe for success in college football. Now, if you're in the American, then yeah. But if you're in the Big 12 against high-powered offenses, great offensive-minded head coaches, great quarterbacks, that's not going to get you anywhere. I mean, Kansas State, Bill Snyder, I did think he started to lose his touch in recruiting. You saw it. Now with Chris Fieldman, you think, have they gotten better? Have they gotten an edge? I don't think they have. TCU is a very attractive job. It is very attractive. Talent-wise, you got Zach Evans, you got Kendre Miller, you got Quentin Johnston. Love you, my brother. You got amazing players. You got those three guys. Any coach in the country would want to coach those three guys. Okay. I don't know where this would go. Me personally, I would like to see an offensive-minded guy come in, if I'm being honest. Someone who does bring an offensive game plan here, who brings a good offensive coaching staff, but also knows that playing in the Big 12, you really got to have defense. You really do. And I do think some of the personnel that we have at TCU right now can be on a great defense. O'Shawn Mathis, Kari Coleman, Dylan Horton, D. Winters, Trey Tomlinson, Noah Daniels. If the injuries can, without injuries, I think he's very great. In other parts, are spotty. But my number one, and I highly doubt this is going to happen. He's already in the NFL. He's already fast tracking to an NFL head coaching job. But what the hell? Why not call Joe Brady, in my opinion? Why not call him?
Interesting.
Do you want to be under Matt Rule, or do you want to run your own program in the Metroplex in Texas? Already got ties in Louisiana, can go to California, You're gaining ties. TCU is gaining a good recruiting ground in California. Now, I mean, I'm still upset that we were an hour away from getting Jamar Chase. It literally came down to LSU and TCU for Jamar Chase, and he chose LSU.
Yeah.
Worked out for him, of course. But just getting those players, being a high-profile recruiter while also being a great coach and winning, I think matters. My number one guy is Joe Brady. Just give him a call. Ask him what his price is. What do you want? We'll see what can happen. Another one, Dan Lanning, defensive coordinator from Georgia, is something that, I mean, I'm looking at him to replace Matt Eberflus for the Colts, because I think this is the Colts podcast, but he's a guy that I'm looking at for my current team as a defensive coordinator. He is actually a really good recruiter for Georgia. He actually is. He did help gain Monty Rice, Eric Stokes, guys that are in the NFL now. But Adrianna, what are some of your candidates that you would like to see TCU at least give a call to?
Oh, this is a hard one, because I will say I just feel like in general, as far as like coaching vacancies, it's not that I'm not the best at like determining these, but I guess I just kind of struggle on prioritizing like what is like a best fit, I guess. But I definitely do agree about Sonny Dykes on recruiting and the reliance on the transfer portal. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning of this podcast that probably the listeners will quickly find out is growing up, I'm also been a big UT fan. As such, SMU is obviously, getting a lot of hate for that, but SMU's gotten many of our old quarterbacks, and again, they've succeeded, but it's a different conference, it's a different game, and he won't be able to do that in the Big 12, obviously. So I just think that kind of like gap and not being able to get your own guys like there to begin with, I just think that he'd really struggle in that role. He's been at California and Louisiana Tech before as head coaches also, but I just don't know again if it's the best fit. I was reading some other articles earlier, and there were a few that kind of caught my eye. I think I do agree with you as far as an emphasis on offense, just because I think that probably like the defensive staff, that some of it that we currently have is like reliable right now. But I've been really struggling with this one, because I was looking at a lot of guys and I could not pick anybody that I really felt like confident about. A few names that I saw floating around that are defensive coordinators, Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame and Brett Venables from Clemson.
I like that one.
And I liked those for sure. But I do feel like an emphasis on offense would be a little bit more important. And for that, I just didn't feel like I saw anyone, at least at this point, that would be willing to do that in this point in their career, and B, would be like a good fit at like TCU. So not the best answer right now, honestly, but those are the two people that I saw floating around that I honestly really liked. But again, I would like a bit more of an emphasis on offense.
One name that I know I'm out on is Justin Fuente. That is, I don't want Justin Fuente's name near TCU's job. I think we don't really have to mention this, but I think I just want to throw it out there. Art Briles will not be considered for the job, just so everybody knows. But Justin Fuente, he had a great thing going at Virginia Tech when he got there, and he did absolutely nothing with it. So I look at that. I look at the times coming up short. he had some real NFL talent. I mean, you go into the NFL and look what players came from Virginia Tech, and he has nothing to show for it on his resume. So out. I agree with you. Brent Venables is actually another one who is another elite recruiter. Now, he does have 2 sons on the team currently, so he has been approached many times for head coaching gigs, and he has declined all of them. So he even declined Florida, and I believe he declined Texas A&M. So Florida, is it bigger than TCU? I'm gonna say no. Texas A&M, probably. I mean, I don't see the big deal about Texas A&M. It's in the middle of nowhere in Texas. But other than that, someone who can just recruit. Of course, he's one of the guys, Brent Venables. Give him a call. How much do you want? Here's the check. Write your price. Maybe I match it. Maybe I don't. But him, Joe Brady, Dan Lanning, hell, even Billy Napier from Louisiana, who has helped build up that program as well. He's also another option. So when I look at all that, of course, I think the offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes from Baylor, I have a hard time thinking he'll go in conference, or that Baylor would allow him to go in conference. Instead of buying him out, TCU would have to pay Baylor whatever is left on the remaining contract. Kind of the same thing that happened with Jamie Dixon. You know, I full-heartedly, he was going to UCLA. He was. But Jeremiah Donati would not agree to just buy out Jeremiah Donati or buy out Jamie Dixon. So what he told UCLA, you pay me the rest of his contract and you can have him. And I think the rest was like, $18 million. And UCLA just didn't want to do that. So that could be a tricky thing with Jeff Grimes from Baylor. Like even with Steve Sarkisian, you said you're a big UT fan, even though you're on a TCU podcast. I'll allow it. Okay. You know, we've talked about this off record, of course, already. So even with Steve Sarkisian, he comes in, he already has the recruiting grounds. He's been in the NFL. He was at Alabama. He already has those ties in recruiting. Now, when you're at Texas, a brand name, recruiting's just not going to be a hard thing to do. It's just not, okay?
Yeah.
No matter how much I hate that program, everybody wants to wear the burnt orange and white. That's just reality. But with him, he brought an offensive system along with it. And of course, something tells me he also knew SEC was in the works already. Chris Del Conte is a smart man. He is very smart.
Oh, yeah.
He's a very smart man. I'm pretty sure he mentioned that to Steve. Hey, man, we're in the Big 12, but you get to go back to the SEC here in a couple years. Oh, never mind. I'll take the job then. Of course. So Hugh Freeze also, I'm also a little bit sketchy on. You know, we remember how that ended at Ole Miss. He does bring a good, offensive system. Okay. But he also is an elite recruiter as well. That's the only reason why I'm still on the fence about him, because he is an elite recruiter. Remember, I mean, he got DeMarcus Lodge from Cedar Hill, got him to Ole Miss. He got Greg Little from Allen High School, who was Kyler Murray's teammate, literally the best tackle in the nation. He got him to Ole Miss. So we still need to do our homework, of course, but just scaping the landscape from what it looks like, that's where I would like to go. Joe Brady, Brent Venables, Dan Lanning, give those guys a call.
Definitely.
Sit down with their agent. Well, I mean, they're not going to talk to them, but they'll call their agent. What does he want? This is TCU. You are in the Metroplex. You own the Metroplex, basically. You know, Stephen F. Austin, Abilene Christian, or UTSA. My God, that's like 5 hours away. SMU, they don't touch you. So, oh man, it just feels so weird talking about head coaching vacancies with TCU. It feels so weird, Adrianna.
Yeah, I honestly just never even though the rumors were floating out there, like about maybe this being his last season, I never thought we would actually be at this point to be talking about, okay, so who's next? So yeah, that's just weird. But yeah, Brent Venables, I struggled with throwing that out there because he's turned down so many offers before. So I just don't know if that's even reasonable. But yeah, I just definitely need to do more homework, but recruiting probably just number one.
Right.
And yeah, right off the bat, I think anyone that comes in needs to cover a lot of ground like the second that they get here, because that's going to be really important.
All right. Well, the last thing that we're going to cover on this pilot, okay, it's been a good show so far. Hopefully we've entertained you guys enough. Talking about this current team as it sits, okay, I'm not entirely sure who might enter the transfer portal. I'm pretty sure that there might be a couple. That's just how it works. But where they are right now, some issues. Where did it go wrong? What's wrong with the team? What's been the problem for them to be at 3-5? Where are you at when you've watched these games? What is your takeaway from 8 games into the season? Why are we at 3-5?
I would say for me, the biggest thing is sluggish starts. Like right off the bat, I feel like whenever we start playing, we kind of dig ourselves into a pretty big hole. We don't really get after it at the beginning, and then we try to make up for it later on. And normally we do, but by then it's kind of too late and we can't really get ourselves all the way out. Definitely, I think too, a little bit of it is like too much reliance on the run game at times. Um, and I think with that, it's just kind of struggling to balance. Obviously, using that to our advantage, but not overusing it to where it's extremely predictable. And I think those would be the two biggest things. Obviously, on defense, we've struggled there, but also we've had a lot of injuries and kind of like a lack of depth there anyway. So I think those probably would be like the biggest things that I've seen myself. One other thing is, I mean, I think at this point, I really did think at the beginning of this season that this was going to be a breakout year for Max Duggan. I really thought, he's got a few years under his belt, gotten some experience. He's shown a lot of like good just good skills and like flashes before, but I really just thought he just needed to develop a little bit more in-game experience and like working with his teammates. So I thought this year was going to be a breakout year. Obviously, it hasn't necessarily been a bad year for him at all, but it just hasn't really been he hasn't really played to where I thought he would be at this point, I guess. I really just wish he would be further along. I think part of that's just my expectations for him at this point were just higher because he has shown so many, good flashes like early on, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, with Max, quarterbacks can be very tricky. Some take longer to get here. Some don't take as long. Baker Mayfield, it took him a while. Got with an offensive mind, worked out. With even going on right now, I literally just had the guy in my head. CJ Stroud, his first game against Minnesota, Lord have mercy. I mean, he's a freshman. What the hell is he doing? But one thing that quarterbacks show early on, no matter if they're a freshman or they're a senior, whether they have 0 college experience or 80 games of college experience, one thing these good quarterbacks show is consistent accuracy. That's what they can show. That's what makes the difference between guys that go into the NFL and guys that go and work at Allstate after they graduate. That's the difference. So with Max, the accuracy has struggled. It struggled. His freshman year, of course, that was an off year, his freshman year. He was competing with Alex Delton, of all people. And when he didn't beat out Alex Delton, I knew, okay, this kid might have some problems because Alex Delton was not good. So when he gets here, of course, he plays in the Purdue game. He has a couple good games against Texas. Kansas State was a good game. Texas Tech was a good game. Freshman year, okay. I see some things where he can improve. Sophomore year, okay, some of these things got better, but some of them are still struggling. But right now, I'm convinced now Max might be who he is. He might be who he is. There are some times where he has someone wide open, even in the Texas game. I believe it was, I can't remember which down it was. It was a very critical point. I remember I was in Louisiana watching this game. I was supposed to be working too, but I just couldn't help myself. So he literally had Zach Evans wide open on the sideline. He was wide open. I mean, the closest Texas Longhorn to him was like maybe 10, 15 yards away. He was wide open about, oh man, ooh, calm down, Michael. He was about 5 yards away from Zach. And he underthrew him. I don't even know how you do that. Even in street football, I don't know how you do that. I really don't. There are some times where he overthrew Quentin Johnston. Honestly, if Max was consistent with his deep ball, I honestly think this offense would take off. It really would. Quentin Johnston is a downfield threat. Tay Barber is a downfield threat. Blair Conwright is a downfield threat. But Max has consistently overthrown these guys. Where he's flourished is the jump ball to Quentin Johnston. That's where he's flourished. I mean, Quentin Johnston was doing that here in Temple already. But his quarterback was Jared Wiley, who is the tight end at Texas now. They were doing that in Temple. So to get that connection down already with a true number one receiver is big. But Max, he's off and on. He has had a good season. For a college quarterback, he's had a good season. He's not bad. He hasn't been pathetic. He's made good reads. He's made good decisions. It's just the accuracy is just not there sometimes. Now, Sam Ehlinger was not that great of a quarterback, but he's now my backup quarterback on my team. So something's got to give for Max Duggan. There's hope for Max Duggan, okay? Never did I think Sam Ehlinger would be in the NFL, but what do you know? He's on my football team, and he's my backup quarterback. So
I think this comparison is a stretch. I just want to put that out there.
The only comparison I see is they were good at running the football. Honestly,
I don't know. We might have taken it too far just there.
I'm still salty about this, but that's for a whole different show, okay? On a whole different platform. But for Max, staying
Sam
consistent.
has a sugar bowl.
Oh, you did not just get this. All right, guys. It was a great time. This is the retirement of the Purple Rain podcast.
Sorry.
Okay? Okay, that is disrespectful. Okay. Max, he doesn't have anything. Okay, I lost this round. All right, so going to the defense here, one of the biggest problem I've seen outside of injuries, honestly, I don't want to be too hard on these guys, but the interior of the defensive line is a problem. It is a problem. I see it all the time on Twitter. This defense is not good. This isn't a Gary Patterson defense. They're not playing that way. The biggest reason why that is because, first off, any team can run the ball any day of the week against this team. I've gone back and watched a few games. Our defensive tackles are getting moved easily. O'Shawn Mathis is doing a good job setting the edge. Kari Coleman, Dylan Horton, they're splitting snaps there. They're doing a good job as well. D. Winters, my guy, future first-round pick linebacker, hopefully to Indianapolis. He is doing his job. But the reason why sometimes he gets taken out of plays, linemen push these guys out the way, and then they get to the second level and get their hands on D. Winters. Not being able to stop the run is a huge problem, especially if you're running a 4-2-5 defense. You have got to have a stable, strong front if you're going to run a 4-2-5. Another problem where I've seen is in the secondary, you're just young. You're so young, and Gary Patterson's 4-2-5 is one of probably the most complicated defensive systems you'll have to understand, which kind of makes sense because to be at TCU, you have to be pretty smart as a student. So to play in this system, it was a very complicated system. So for these young guys, shout out, I man, I hope I don't butcher his last name, but shout out Michael Oniam Obi. I really hope I didn't butcher his name, but his nickname is Yo-Yo. He was part of the recruiting class, I believe, like 3-4 years ago, suffered a horrible injury that sidelined him for like 2 years, and now he's seeing the field. Shout out to him, man. I'm glad to see him on this field. Noah Daniels has struggled with injuries. Trey Tomlinson, although he was being given a lot of hype from PFF, I hate PFF, by the way, but even though he was being given a lot of love, he does make plays. I think his future in the NFL is as a slot corner in a safety. Being 5'9" at that size could get you in trouble in the NFL on the outside. So there's that. Finding a second linebacker to complement D Winters is another thing. Wyatt Harris, Jamoy Hodge. I think Jamoy Hodge athletically needs to be on the field. Wyatt Harris, this is some, and I agree with Coach Patterson, but some of it that kind of confused me a little bit is if you have a guy that is so athletic, he is one of the best athletes on the team, but you give the starting job to a guy because he knows where he's going. Wyatt Harris knows where he's going. He knows what to do on plays, but athletically, he's just not all there to make a play. Jamoy Hodge, from what I've seen these last few weeks, he's playing. He does look lost at times, like Gary Patterson has said, but his athleticism can help complement that, can help cover that up, whether if it's a misstep, a miscoverage, a misread, whatever the case may be from that will linebacker spot. I don't think it's going to change, honestly. The defensive tackles, I really miss having Ross Blacklock, honestly. He did so much for the defense up front. But so far, that's what we've seen, guys, from the TCU football team this year. There's definitely a lot of highs to it. Like we talked about, if you're a head coach looking at this job, you have Quentin Johnston, you have 2 stable of running backs. Well, really, if you want to be honest, you have 3, you have 4. You have a good offensive line. Defense, you got some talent there. Now, whether they decide to go to the NFL, that's a whole nother story. But the foundation, amazing. Stadium, amazing. Area, anything, any area is great when you have Show's Barbecue. Not Show's Barbecue. Ham Barbecue. There you go. Any place. Yes, I actually tried that. I tried that place. It was probably the best barbecue I've ever had in my life. So
yes, so good.
Guys, I really don't know what else to talk about. I think we're going to wrap this show up now. It is definitely one hell of an emotional roller coaster. Even continuing the year, it is going to be very hard to watch this game on Saturday against Baylor and see Jerry Kill and not Gary Patterson. It is going to be difficult. Yeah. It is going to be hard. But hey, it is always go Frogs. Screw the Baylor Bears. Although I do got to give love to Dave Aranda. Absolute class personified. Tremendous amount of respect for Coach P. This doesn't even feel like a rivalry anymore. And I kind of miss the old Art Browse Gary Patterson rivalry. I really miss it. But hey, guys, that will wrap it up. Any closing thoughts after the first episode? Adrianna, we made it through the first episode.
We did it. I mean, it went by a lot faster than I thought it would, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're not trying to do no 2-3 hour show now. We're not trying to do that. But what we are going to do is continue to give you guys episodes every single week. Okay. We are basically new everywhere. Okay. We're going to be on YouTube. We're going to be on Twitter. Of course, I'm not sure if you're someone important. I probably already followed you, but if you need to follow us on Twitter, it is purplerain_pod. Okay. purplerain_pod. Find us on Twitter. Also find us at Purple Rain Podcast on YouTube as well. Guys, she is Adrianna Araujo. I am Michael Terrazas. It is going to be a fun time recording the show, talking TCU football, basketball, recruiting, guys going to the NFL, the whole 9 yards. Adrianna, thank you again. Great co-host. And guys, make sure to hit like, subscribe, leave a review. Shout out Coach Patterson. Thank you again. We love you. Let's go defeat some Bears this Saturday. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.